Welcome to Going Underground with me, Afshan Rattansi. Every Monday, Wednesday and Saturday, we're bringing you the stories that really matter in the United Kingdom for those of you wishing to question more. In today's show...
Israel has the right to defend itself.
Is that why Britain sold millions of pounds worth of weapons to Israel ahead of over 12,000 deaths and injuries in Gaza over the summer? Plus, Tony Blair pops up at Prime Minister's questions. And his iconic image adorns T-shirts and posters across Britain and the world. The legend of Che Guevara lives on as his daughter tells us how a revolution in a small Caribbean island over 50 years ago affects UK-US relations today. Plus, one of Britain's best flamenco artists, Jackson Scott, plays in the studio. All this and more on today's Going Underground. The reverberations of police killing in Ferguson, Missouri were felt here in London this week in the biggest anti-police demonstration for years. British state-mandated media didn't cover it, but the symbolic fences around Parliament Square were torn down in rage on Wednesday. Campaigners against police killing of black men here in Britain marched from the US Embassy via Scotland Yard to the shadows of the House of Commons. This is what a relative of murdered black youth Mark Duggan told RT's Harry Fear about the reasons for UK solidarity with the demonstration across 100 cities in the USA.
Enough is enough. As you can see, the police are murdering black people with impunity. We all know that the American police are very aggressive and are very trigger happy, but I'm afraid to say the British police are not much different. The institutional racism in this country is so ingrained, I don't even think they realise that they are racist themselves, but they are. We know Mark's death was a racist murder because after the police murdered Mark, they didn't even feel that there was a need for them to come and inform his parents that he'd been shot dead.
The death of Carol's nephew sparked riots across England in 2011, which were condemned by Prime Minister David Cameron. But while Cameron has been eager to condemn judicial decisions around the world in countries opposed to US foreign policy, he's not commented on the decision by a US grand jury. America imprisons more people than any other country in the world, and though African Americans make up 12% of the US population, 40% of the US's 2.1 million male inmates are black. What role did Britain play in the summer of carnage in the besieged Gaza Strip when Israel killed thousands of civilians as part of Operation Protective Edge? It turns out the British government was directly involved. The UK licensed millions worth of arms to Israel used to kill Palestinians in Gaza. With me is Andrew Smith from the Campaign Against the Arms Trade. Welcome back. Andrew, how did you arrive at this £7 million figure?
Well, the £7 million figure is in terms of military licences awarded in the first 6 months of this year. That's the period leading directly up to the bombing. And the £7 million is made up of different military licences, including things like components for drones, targeting equipment and gun sightings, things like that. So quite a broad range of different weapons. But in terms of the role that UK weapons played in the conflict, we know from a report undertaken by Vince Cable and the Department of Business, Innovation and Skills that they themselves found that there were 12 licences for weapons and components which they thought were highly likely to have been used against the people of Gaza.
Are they conducting an inquiry at the moment, Vince Cable's department?
Well, yes, there's a new review which has been ordered at the start of this month. This follows a threat of legal action from ourselves, actually, about the arms sales to Israel. But it's not the first time that there's been reason to suspect UK weapons have been used in conflict by Israel, actually. In 2009, the then Foreign Secretary David Miliband told Parliament that it was almost certain, in his words, that UK components had been used in the bombing of Gaza that year. And actually, at the time, he said, we'll be taking this into account and reflecting it in any future arms sales to Israel, and of suggesting that there'd be change, but of course nothing changed. Well,
in fairness to the government, the numbers are well down. I mean, £42 million, Israel via 131 UK arms companies. So 7 million is less. Obviously, that doesn't. It's no succor to the relatives of those dead. But
pound figure actually covers the
this period as well.
Well, yes. I mean, the actual arms sales to Israel usually amount to about 10 to 15 million pounds a year, and actually the first 6 months of this year counting to 7 million suggests it's roughly on track for another year of more of the same. But actually the issue goes way beyond Israel, because every year the government produces its own human rights and democracy report, which lists countries of concern where the UK has serious issues with human rights or democracy in these countries. Israel and the occupied territories actually appear on the list. But there are 27 countries on it, and in the last 6 months alone, the UK has sold £60 million worth of weapons to countries that are on their own blacklist.
I mean, David Cameron has been very voluble even this week, saying he supports Israel. He supports their right for self-defense. He said that when the bombing was going on and these thousands of people were being killed in Gaza. And even this week he said, you know, we support democracy, and democracy means Israel in the Middle East.
Well, the UK's consistently shown a strong political support for the Israeli government. This has been the case under Blair, it was the case under Brown, and it's the case of Cameron, and actually it goes back further than Blair as well. So that's not really a surprise. But what has been interesting is that even during the height of the conflict, Philip Hammond, the Foreign Secretary, was refusing to even accept that Israel's response could be seen as disproportionate.
Why do you think that is? Is there a commercial imperative going on, regardless of bigger foreign policy geopolitics? It's helping British companies. I
mean, there is a significant UK investment within Israel, and there's significant Israeli investment within the UK, but I think a large part of it also comes down to the UK's relationship with the United States as well, which obviously sees Israel as being a very strong, very important partner. And I think that we know that's been a consideration because Jack Straw, when he was Foreign Secretary, accepted as much when he was discussing UK weapons being used in Apache helicopters. So we know that is definitely a factor, and I think there are definitely geopolitical issues at play here as well. But that's not just the case with Israel, it's the case with countries like Saudi Arabia as well, or Qatar, or all these other countries where the UK does sell large quantities of weapons.
So an embargo just isn't on the table when it comes to discussions in the Foreign Office, let alone the business department, presumably, unless you're detecting a difference between Vince Cable, the Lib Dems and the coalition, and the Tories?
Well, we know that at the height of the conflict that there were ministers within the Liberal Democrats who were wanting to see an embargo on arms sales to Israel. And obviously we think that there definitely should have been one, because what's become evident is that the arms export control system is broken. That's not just been the case in Israel in the last couple of months, because we've also seen UK tear gas being used in the streets of Hong Kong against peaceful protesters. And yet Philip Hammond's response when he was on the Daily Politics on the BBC was to say that it was immaterial where the tear gas came from. He suggested it was unimportant because if Hong Kong hadn't got the tear gas from the UK, it would simply have got it from somewhere else.
So basically the government's point of view is the Israelis would get it from somewhere else. Let's just get on to drones, though, because more than 1,000 Palestinians killed by drones. What's Britain's role in drones that the Israeli IDF are using?
Well, we know from the review undertaken by Vince Cable and the Department of Business, Innovation and Skills that a number of the components which they cited, British components which were likely to have been used in Gaza, a number of them were drone components. And there has been a lot, and it has been said, the Israeli drone industry is one of the most advanced in the world. You've got major Israeli drone companies like Elbit Systems, who actually do an awful lot of work with UK companies. In fact, the Ministry of Defence has a contract worth £1 billion with drone manufacturers, a large part which is going to.
So Britain is intricately involved. It's not just arms companies. It's Barclays Bank. They're involved with Elbit Systems.
Well, Barclays has investments with Elbit Systems, but Barclays has for a long time been linked to the arms trade and to investments in some extremely unethical businesses.
So what can ordinary people do to change the government's mind? Everyone saw those pictures. I think for the first time, arguably, Israel started to get bad publicity in mainstream media because of all the killing of so many Palestinians, so many hundreds of Palestinian children. Britain's involved.
Well, what people can do is make their voice heard and take action, whether that is in forms of direct action, whether it's in forms of taking part in large protests as they're happening, or whether it's also in writing to their MPs. There's a number of different avenues people can take and should take whatever peaceful avenues they feel comfortable doing. But this is meant to be a democracy, and people have every right to make their feelings known.
Andrew Smith, thank you.
Thank you.
On Monday, some of England and Wales's most senior judges will be grilled in Parliament over massive coalition government changes to legal aid. One can but hope that parliamentarians will take note of the state of justice in an age of austerity. Budgets for solicitors to attend criminal hearings and police stations are to be cut by 2/3. That's certainly going to make it difficult for those charged with crimes they have not committed to access justice. And it's not just criminal cases. The civil legal aid budget has been slashed. 1 in 5 law centres have closed down since April 2013. As Justice Secretary Chris Grayling says, it's all about delivering better value for money.
Obviously a big focus on bringing down cost, but also I think on building confidence in the system.
Grayling aimed to cut the budget by at least £220 million per year, all the way up to 2018. So has it saved us money? Even the National Audit Office has concluded that the Ministry of Justice has not considered the full impact of these drastic cuts. It has accused the government of introducing changes too quickly. In the end, things are now costing us more. The NAO concluded that too many people are now simply representing themselves in court, and the number of cases in which both sides have to do this has risen by 1/3. As a result, proceedings take longer and delays cost money. Children are particularly affected. The Bar Council estimates that 68,000 of them would be better off if legal aid was not slashed. Victims of child abuse and domestic abuse are suffering. Grayling introduced bureaucratic procedures for which you have to pay if you want to prove abuse. Just a simple letter from your GP to support your case can set you back £75. Justice is supposed to be blind, but not literally. In one recent case, an illiterate mother of 4 with poor sight and hearing was forced to represent herself in a custody battle for her children. Fortunately, Senior Family Court Judge Louise Hallam has stepped forward and said that the woman is not getting a fair trial. But how many other families around the country will not have a judge as sympathetic? In part 2, the legacy of Che Guevara lives on. We speak to the Argentine revolutionary's daughter. Plus, what does David Cameron think of Tony Blair's latest humanitarian award? That's all coming up after the break. Lewis Hamilton won the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix on Sunday, and one Tory chose Prime Minister's questions to talk about the success of Hamilton in the United Arab Emirates having an impact on UK engineering.
We're very proud of local boy Lewis Hamilton. Would the Prime Minister join me in congratulating Lewis, congratulating Ross Brawn, who helped to design the car, and Mercedes, of course. And does he agree with me that the British motor racing industry not only gives us a lot of entertainment, but it also gives us jobs, engineering skills, and British business success?
Those remarks came just hours after a bomb attack against the UAE's embassy in Baghdad in what appeared to be a reprisal for this week's bombing missions in Libya carried out by the UAE. But Cameron's war in Libya is no longer mentioned in Parliament. British support for Israel, though, is, and one MP wanted a condemnation of a new law there that critics say smacks of apartheid.
Will he make clear that statutory repressive removal of citizenship rights on the basis of religion will turn Israel into an apartheid state?
Does the Prime Minister oppose an alleged apartheid state?
One of the reasons I'm such a strong supporter of Israel is that it is a country that has given rights and democracy to its people.
As for the man who won the by-election, he wanted to take his former leader to task about the NHS.
Mark Reckless.
It seems not everyone wanted to hear from turncoat Mark Reckless of UKIP, who advocated repatriation of immigrants ahead of his spectacular by-election victory.
I am grateful to the Prime Minister for spending so much time in Rochester and Stroud.
That's a reference to David Cameron being so unpopular in Britain that his presence only benefits anyone opposing him.
Dr. Philip Barnes, Acting Chief Executive of Medway Hospital. said this morning that what our hospital needs is a period of patience and stability. Does the Prime Minister agree?
The PM batted him away.
The only thing I fail to understand is why he's decided to join a party that doesn't believe in the NHS and wants to break it up.
Ed Miliband also asked questions about the NHS, and they were similarly batted away because of Labour privatisation policy. But Miliband's predecessor was name-checked because of a scandal involving Save the Children.
Does my right honourable friend believe that Tony Blair should get a Global Legacy Award from Save the Children for taking us to war unnecessarily in Iraq?
And it's not just Blair that's implicated.
The remarkable thing about this award is that Tony Blair got it from someone who used to work for Gordon Brown. So, obviously, the person who gave the award knows about peacemaking and peacekeeping.
Labour's foreign policy legacy continues, even as Britain again has boots on the ground in Iraq. Britain opposes US sanctions on the Caribbean island of Cuba, voting against the Obama administration of the United Nations. It's a subject that is up for debate at today's TUC Latin America conference here in London. And Aleida Guevara, daughter of Che Guevara, the revolutionary whose image is recognized around the world, will be among the speakers. Welcome, Aleida, to Going Underground. You're a doctor who has worked in medical missions around the world. Britain has sent soldiers to Sierra Leone to combat Ebola. Cuba sent doctors at first. There are British doctors now. What's the difference between the Cuban response and the response of other countries?
I don't think that we can say that we are going to teach this to Great Britain. But I think we show that you can do better things for human beings through science, through solidarity, and tenderness between people.
And what is Cuba doing in West Africa about Ebola?
We sent a brigade of doctors, scientists, and health workers, all with the aim to look for solutions for this disease, to try to eliminate this new pandemic that's assaulting humanity.
The Cuban attack on Ebola, how is that going at the moment?
It's going well. We're working as a team, which is the best way to work as doctors. Not just looking at the disease, but trying to find ways to prevent it repeating itself. We're working more to try to avoid other people from getting ill. Not just finding the cure, but avoiding other people getting ill.
When it comes to healthcare in Britain, usually people talk about private companies taking over the National Health Service here. How do you see private companies taking healthcare over? Of course, in Cuba, it's a public health system.
La salud es un derecho del ser humano.
Health is a human right. If you ask someone, how much would they pay to save the life of their child? Nobody can give you an amount because there is not enough money to pay for the life of a human being. Something that has no price cannot be on the market.
Now, if the government here may differ on that subject, the British government is getting closer to Cuba. The Foreign Office sent a minister there, Hugo Swire, first to visit for nearly a decade. How do you characterize British-Cuban relations?
A mí me parece que estamos viviendo un momento
I think
muy
we're living
especial
in a very
de la humanidad.
special moment for humanity.
Por primera vez, periódicos
For the first
importantes de
time,
Estados Unidos
some important American
hablan bien
press
de Cuba.
are saying good things
Eso
about Cuba.
es casi un hecho
That is
histórico.
almost an historical event. I think that somehow governments are becoming aware that it is a lot better to have relations with other people, respecting their differences. Having strong, healthy relationships can help us both.
But Washington presumably is not happy that Britain votes against America when it comes to sanctions on Cuba.
I imagine that the United States government doesn't like it at all if someone goes against their wishes. But that's not strange either. Great Britain colonized the 13 colonies of the United States. At that time, they fought against Great Britain, and since then, they are countries that are supposed to be independent and sovereign. Thus, Washington can be happy or not, but that shouldn't be a problem for Great Britain.
And what will you be talking about at the Trade Union Conference on Latin America?
We're going to talk about the need to lift the blockade. We're going to talk about the Cuban health missions, in this case against Ebola. And we're going to talk about our heroes arrested in the United States. 5 men unjustly jailed, and 3 are still in the American jails. And we're going to talk about our revolution.
Britain didn't allow one of the Miami 5 to come here, René González. What did you think of the British decision not to allow him here?
It is the right of the United Kingdom to allow someone to enter their national territory or not. It is the right of each state, and that has to be respected. I don't understand it, but it has to be respected.
And on the blockade, do you think the blockade helps Britain, the European Union, to work with Cuba because America can't trade with Cuba?
The problem with the blockade is that it influences other countries in the world. If the United States doesn't want to trade with Cuba, that is their right, and we have to accept it. But the problem with the blockade is that the United States doesn't want any country to freely trade with Cuba. And that's why the blockade directly affects our relationship as a sovereign territory with other countries in the world.
Dr. Elena Guevara, thank you. Now to one song that celebrates the life of Elena Guevara's father, Che. Hasta Siempre Comandante was composed in 1965 by Cuban musician Carlos Puebla. The lyrics are a response to the farewell letter written by Che Guevara as he left Cuba for the last time. With us is singer-songwriter Jackson Scott, who's going to play us out with his rendition of the song. Here's Jackson Scott.
Aprendimos a quererte desde la histórica altura, cuando el sol de tu bravura le puso cerca la muerte. Aquí se queda la clara, la entrañable transparencia de tu querida presencia, comandante Che Guevara. Y fuerte sobre la historia dispara, cuando toda Santa Clara se despierta para verte. Aquí se queda la clara, la entrañable transparencia de tu querida presencia, comandante Che Guevara. Vienes quemando la brisa con soles de primavera para plantar la bandera. Ay, con la luz de tu sonrisa, aquí se queda la clara, la entrañable transparencia de tu querida presencia, comandante Che Guevara. Y aquí se queda la clara, la entrañable transparencia de tu querida presencia, comandante Che Guevara.
If you want to hear more of Jackson's music, go to jacksonscottmusic.com or listen to his songs on the award-winning documentary Drug Lord Legend of Shorty, out in cinemas in December. That's it for today. Join us again on Monday when we speak to Human Rights Watch about how Theresa May's reasonable suspicion could ban you from entering your own country. In the meantime, connect to Going Underground via Twitter, Facebook, SoundCloud or email. See you on Monday.